Please, hello everyone. I'm Emily Marcus and Tolmie. I'm the president of APRA New York. We are very excited to welcome you all today to our lunchtime webinar, how to use news to deepen donor relationships. This is going to be great, and I'm very excited to welcome Sarah Landman from Insightful. Insightful has been such a great partner to APRA New York over the years. If any of you were able to join us in October for our virtual conference, then you probably heard me thanking Insightful quite a bit before all of our sessions because they were one of our conference sponsors. And again, we couldn't do a lot of this programming at such a reduced cost if it wasn't for Insightful as supporting us and our work here. So with that, I am going to remind everyone to please mute your microphones. If you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature. And this is being recorded, and we will be sending this out post presentation, so don't feel like you have to quickly take notes. I'm sure Sarah will be more than happy to share her slides with us during our post webinar correspondence. So with that, Sarah, we are delighted to have you and look forward to hearing everything about donors and news. And so I turn it over to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I am so happy to be here with you today and for the opportunity for Insightful to be a sponsor of APRA New York. Thank you. And I'm going to turn off my camera while I'm presenting. Give me one moment. All right, so we are here today to talk about how to use news to deepen donor relationships. And just a little bit about me, I'm the Executive Vice President of Insightful. And my background before Insightful was in major gifts fundraising and fundraising consulting. So that's kind of the background that I come from. Insightful is new software that helps you keep on top of news about your donors wherever they are in the world. And we do this through our easy to use interface and the 14,000 news sources that we license to give you access to from 200 countries. But we are not here today to talk about Insightful. We're here to talk about the news. And I personally am really passionate about using news to deepen donor relationships and the value of the news in general, because news is literally in my DNA. I grew up in a small town, Winona, Minnesota, and my dad is the publisher and the owner of the newspaper in Winona, Minnesota. Here's a photo at that newspaper with my dad and my children, Philip and Lulu. And growing up literally in the news and with the family business being the newspaper, I came to really value and know the true value of news for a community and the amount of information that's in the news about people and companies and community events and just how much that means to a community. And later in life, when I got involved with nonprofits, how important it is to know news about donors. My first job was as a major gifts officer at my alma mater, St. Mary's University in Winona, Minnesota. And when I started in 2004, it wasn't as easy to get news as it is today. I literally had to go in a dark room and sift through file cabinets to get clippings about donors. And I wanted to, valuing the news, I was hungry to know as much about the background of those donors as possible before I would go and meet with them. So that's what I had to do back in the day, is sit in a dirty file cabinet and grab folders that I couldn't take out of the office because they were literally the only copy of the folder and the clippings. We've come a long way. Also, it would take weeks for me to get up-to-date clippings about donors. If somebody that they cared about in their family passed away, if something happened in their business, if they were given an award. I would get it sometimes through our limited clipping service, but I would get it a lot later than it would have been helpful for me to have it. Want to start by making the case for news to deepen donor relationships. And that's that if your organization is relying on your donors to just tell you when newsworthy things happen to them, that is, it's not reliable. And especially from 2020 to even where we are now in 2022, we haven't been, many of us have not been seeing our donors as regularly. Maybe the events haven't happened or they just have started to happen. Visits, in-person visits, kind of those organic ways that our organizations would interact with our donors, where they could share news that's happening in their lives. It hasn't happened. And in general, I don't think relying on the hope that our donors are going to tell us things is a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. And I think that it's a lot, you're going to have a lot more of a reliable way to know the things you need to know about your top donors and prospects if you keep on top of the news about them. And many of your donors, especially your trustees and your top donors, they expect you to know when newsworthy things happen. And in general, not just in the time of 2020 COVID, they they won't just tell you. If it's a big thing like their company going public or they're selling a company or something really big professionally, they may not have time to tell you. If it's something awful like the loss of a loved one, they may, telling the nonprofits they support is probably not top on their list, but they still want you to know about it. And the way that you can know about it and do the right thing with that information is monitoring news, however you want to do that, on especially your top donors and your trustees. Technology makes this easier than ever, not just insightful. There's a number of different tools you can use to monitor the news. And there really is no reason to not keep on top of current news about your prospects and donors, for your organization to do the right thing with that news, and turn that information into outreach for your organization. And just another point, I really like the marketing book. It's called Obvious Adams. It's about a 20-minute read. I recommend it for whoever handles marketing for any of your organizations. And the bottom line of that book is that the simplest answer is usually the best answer. And the problem and the question I think that all of us ask as development professionals is, how do I get more information about our donors? How do I know more? How do I know more for either to get the correct ask amount, to know who in my database we should be interacting with? How do I, have more information to interact with donors? And the simplest answer to that is, it's in the news. There's a lot of other tech about wealth and about, black box AI, and that all has its place. But the simplest answer to how do I know more about a donor, especially somebody that has the potential to be a significant donor, is to look to the news, to see what information is happening about them now and what's happened in their life historically. There's a true cost of missing newsworthy information on your donors. It's missed opportunities to connect with them when great things are happening. And you can look uncaring. You can look uncaring if you miss newsworthy information. And you can even lose a donor over missing information. There's a university we work with that missed the obituary for one of their top donors' mothers. This donor was a $70 million donor. The university missed the obit, and she came out publicly in the press. You can Google who this is, and you may even know, and said she was never giving to them ever again. how hurt she was that they missed the obituary for her mother. Another organization that she gives much less to happened to catch it in the news and acknowledge it. And I imagine that some of her giving has been diverted there, but it didn't need to happen. And there's a cost for this organization. Unfortunately, the cost was the $70 million donor who gave 70 million to that point. Who knows how much they would have continued to give if the organization had been doing the right thing and monitoring news about their top donors and trustees. On the other side, there are so many benefits to keeping on top of news about your donors. It can help prepare your gift officers better to interact with that donor. It shows that you care about that donor to stay on top of news about them. And it can be used for cultivation moves. And there's a huge benefit to that. Another point on news benefits is a number of your trustees and top donors have used news to be successful in their career. They understand the value of news. 2 points on that. I went to a presentation with the CEO of Proforma. His name is Greg Mazzillo. And he talked about when he was just starting his business, he went to a company in Cleveland to try to get their business. They said no. He continued to monitor news about them and saw news about a made in Cleveland um, program in the Cleveland Plain Dealer that would impact this customer. So he took that news and he reached back out and said, "Hey, are you interested now? Because you fit this criteria and so do we." And he was able to close one of his first $1 million deals because he was watching the news. Another person that I serve on the board of trustees of St. Mary's University in Minnesota with I told him what I was doing with Insightful, and he shared. He's a wealth manager. He's been very successful, and he said, "Yeah, I monitored the news, our local news, and the Wall Street Journal, and a number of news sources religiously early in my career, and continued to do that." And he secured one of his biggest first accounts by seeing that there was a new CEO at a company in the area and reaching out to that CEO early to ask for the business. That was his first big deal. And he continued to do that to become one of the most successful wealth managers in the area. So your donors recognize the value of the news, especially donors of that are of a certain demographic and have historically that was what they need. That's one of the only tools they had to keep up on information. So if they see you using the news, you're going to look like you're really prepared and caring and smart. So a quick case study on the ROI of news. So a nonprofit that we work with, a social service organization, had a gift from a donor, a six-figure gift, very nice, generous gift from a new donor. They had never talked to them. They didn't know anything about them, and of course, they wanted to. Who is this? How can I connect with them? What makes sense? How do we cultivate this? So they looked at the news and they found some information that this donor, a news article about a land transfer that involved this donor in another state. And a board member was able to take that information and make a relationship map between that donor that nobody knew anything about and somebody that donor knew and trusted and had a relationship with. And the board member was able to reach out to the trusted advisor of this donor and make the connection they basically make the common connection that the organization that this donor gave to and a trusted advisor had in common. And through that relationship connection, the donor, a few weeks later after that happened, the news was found, the trustee was able to reach out have make that relationship connection, gave $1 million because of, I mean, they cared about the mission, but no gift officer had met with them. It was the news and information found in the news that led to the relationship connection and ultimately $1 million gift. Columbia University, we work with them and they rely heavily on news, and they use news to track their trustees and their top donors, and they find a number of pieces of information in the news about awards and honors, especially that their donors are receiving. And they use that to reach out, cultivation from gift officers and even the president for these donors. And they find information and news, especially local news, that they're not getting anywhere else. Cornell University, we work with them and they needed information about a young entrepreneur that they found out raised 160 million in venture cap funding. Were looking and looking, they could not find any information about this person, and they found it in the news. They found information about this individual and his company through a vetted news source. A law school we work with looked to the news to find out more information about a family that was a new family they were cultivating. And they found information in historic news that the patriarch of this individual's family that started the business that generated their family wealth was a veteran and a World War II veteran. And there were a number of articles about that. They were able to take that information and talk to the family they were cultivating and steer them to a case item that they had for veteran scholarships. It's something they do, it's not something they typically lead with, but because they had the information that the patriarch of this family and the person that had created the family wealth years ago was a veteran, they were able to talk about that, and that guided their conversation, and that connected with this family, and they are now being cultivated for a major gift for that case item. Again, they would not have had that if they didn't look to the news about that family. A medical foundation we work with finds key information about board appointments for their top donors and prospects. They found an op ed that a top donor expected them to know about, and continue to find insights about awards, honors, and again, board appointments and newsworthy things for their donors. And they send that out to their gift officers and even their CEO for cultivation action. Just want to talk a minute about the type of information that's in the news. One piece of information that is helpful to find in the news is information about privately held companies. The Library of Congress actually cites news as the number one way for people to get information about privately held companies. I know that's a pain point for our industry to know, okay, how big is this company? What does this company do? What do they care about? That's in the news. News about special purpose acquisition companies or SPACs. It's a best practice to follow donors and that company in the news to see what's happening there. There's articles about foundations, what they care about, what they've given to in the past. There's real estate transactions. Again, the land transfer I talked about that resulted in the $1 million gift, with the relationship connection that led to the $1 million gift. And a number of real estate transactions are in the news. It depends on the county, but you can get a good amount of information there on, where on properties and values of properties. Obituaries. obituaries, the number one place to get them is still the news, marriage and divorce announcements, and also information about philanthropic activity. When major gifts are made, those are newsworthy, especially in the communities, the suburbs, the small communities where these donors live. And there's typically quotes from these donors about why they made the gift, and their philanthropic goals and motivations. So that is also helpful to know. Millennial major donors. It's more important than ever to know newsworthy things about millennial major donors. And this is another topic I speak on. I'm not going to go into it today, but there are millennial millionaires. There are 700,000 of them today and in the US, and that's net worth in millennial millionaires, not just their homes are worth $1 million. And there are going to be many more by 2030 with the great wealth transfer of between 20 to 70 trillion dollars that are going to end up in their hands. And millennial major donors have higher expectations, and they tend to be harder to connect with. And news is something that is a no-brainer. If they are promoted, if they have a baby, if they start a company that's sold, that's all newsworthy, and those are things you can use to connect with them. And they expect you to know when newsworthy things happened. They've lived, a good portion of their lives online. So it's just kind of an expectation. It's not necessarily rational or reasonable. But if they're in the news and they are giving leadership gifts to your organization, they expect you to know about it. And they also want more authentic relationships with the organizations that they support. And part of an authentic relationship is keeping on top of what's happening in the lives of the people you care about and care about you. And keeping on top of newsworthy things is one way to do that. And also, deeper relationships lead to revenue. And you can use news to deepen these relationships. And when you're keeping on top of news, your gift officers look caring and even omniscient. Your organization shares in the great times in the lives of these donors, when they're winning awards, when they're giving major gifts, selling their company, those great, exciting times. By acknowledging that in a timely manner, it's a game changing cultivation step. And also, help being part of the times that are not so happy. If they lose family members, if bad things happen, they're in obits, they're having challenges in their lives that are newsworthy. If they're your leadership donors and prospects, they want you to know about that, and you can be there for them. You can see that they lost a loved one in an obit, and your organization can take the right step, whether that's sending a card, calling, texting, sending flowers, even booking travel for a leader in your organization to be there. Those things matter. And both when tough things happen and great things happen, somebody that they support, another nonprofit that they support, one of the organizations is going to know about it, and they're going to get there. So it's important, and you can have an edge on other organizations that they give to for you to be the one that knows about that in a timely fashion. You get your flowers there first, and they're going to remember that you were there for them in the great times and in the tough times, when either good news or bad news happens to them. And those things will deepen the being there, knowing, taking the right action will deepen the relationship with that donor. And deep relationships, better relationships, will lead to more revenue for your institution. And I know that it can be hard sometimes, especially if you have a smaller shop, to follow news about your donors. And I have a couple of recommendations on that and how to do that better. One is to find ways to make news an easier part of your workflow. We do that at Insightful. There's a number of other ways that you can do that, but just, what's measured is managed. And if you measure that, if you put that into the workflow of your organization, you will find things about your donors and it will make a difference. Another kind of outside the box recommendation is to engage others in your organization to help you monitor news. Perhaps, the office of the vice president or president in your organization, depending on the size, maybe their admin can set up some alerts, or use a tool to monitor your trustees, your top donors. Another one is trustees. If you have members of your board of trustees that are especially retired and they're looking for another way to help you, you can ask them, hey, can you monitor this foundation that we're looking to get a gift from in the news? Can you monitor a couple people for me? And if you see something, can you send it to me? So, just a couple ideas that are outside the box of ways to get help, because I know that, again, a number of you are from small shops and this can be difficult.
Well, it's viral, so it could be. I've been on
And
all week. I've been at
finally,
Girls
I'm
Room.
going to close on, just that you have a responsibility to know news about your top donors and trustees. It's good stewardship. They care so much about you that they give you leadership gifts and give you their time. Um, and it's good stewardship. They expect it. Again, it's the right thing to do. And we used to have the 80-20 rule, about 80% of revenue is coming from 20% of donors. As many of you know, that's turned more into the 95-5% rule. We have 95% of revenue coming from 5% of donors. And if we go into a recession, I think that is going to be even more the case for more of us to see those numbers shift towards less donors, giving more who are less impacted by the economy. And we can't afford to miss any newsworthy information about that 5%. We can't run the risk of missing something that they expect us to see. And just the fear of missing out, right? If something great happens and it's in the news and your organization could use that to have a cultivation move with somebody in this 5%, what's that worth? It's so important, especially as less people are providing more support for our organizations. And with that, I'll go to questions. I would love to hear your thoughts about news and how you use news, maybe your success stories. Would love to just use the last part of our time together to have a discussion.
Hey, Sarah.
Thank you.
So um
Oh, sorry.
we had some things in chat over here.
Okay.
So Sheila says that this is all fantastic information to track. However, what is the best time conscious and inclusive strategy to do so?
Time conscious and inclusive. Okay. Um, Time conscious, I would say use a database that does that. Insightful happens to do that. I'm not here to just sell Insightful, but Insightful is the easiest way to do that in an automated way. There, um, we are the only company, I believe, in technology that automates that process. There may be others, but I would say use technology, some type of technology to make it easy. Inclusive, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Um, but I think it's great to monitor news on as many people as you can. If you're in higher ed, I think it's a good best practice to monitor whenever your institution is being mentioned, because you'll see, obits of anybody associated with your institution. news if they are about maybe younger alumni that aren't part of a major gifts portfolio but are doing exciting things. That's a way. But I guess I'm not quite sure about what you mean on about when you say inclusive.
Sarah Sheila also wrote, does Insightful cover Canadian news?
It does. Yes.
Okay.
We have Canadian sources. We
Um,
cover 200 countries, so we have
oh
sources
wow.
from most places.
Okay. Um, Lauren is asking um, any advice on the parameters to set for news alerts to yield the best results?
Yeah, I would say number one, start manageable. Start with your trustees and start with your top prospects, your principal gifts prospects, and get used to staying on top of that. However, you're going to stay on top of that, whether that be using tech like Insightful or even Google Alerts. I'm not a huge fan of Google Alerts, but it's better than nothing. But start small so you don't get overwhelmed. Find the value, see the value, communicate that to your leadership, and kind of track what happens with it. And then that helps you get a case to do more of it, and invest both the time and in resources to monitor more news.
Sarah, I'm just curious, why is Google Alerts not one of your favorites?
Yeah, because Google is an ad in at the core of Google, it's an ad platform. They're going to serve you up the things that they want to serve you up. Also, you can have delays with Google Alerts. I know, with us as a news database and the fact that we license content, we actually get the feeds from our 14,000 sources. So we're getting that content to the nonprofits we serve. One example, we work with a a university in the Midwest, and they got a ping about a donor in Insightful that won a major award. They were able to pass that on to the gift officer that represents that donor who was due to meet with them. The gift officer was able to congratulate that person in person, and it was a really good celebration. It made the donor feel good. And they also had a Google alert set up on that individual, and they didn't get the Google alert about the event until 3 days after it happened. So it's hard to rely on Google for timeliness. And also, so much of news has and it started to be behind paywalls. And I know that's a struggle for a number of nonprofits. We work with a news consultant here at Newsbank. Newsbank is our parent company. And he shared with us that it's now up to 70% of news sources are behind some type of paywall. And the way that feeds into Google Alerts is you could get a Google alert on somebody, click on it, and you're stopped by a paywall. Are you really going to subscribe to every single source out there? That could be tremendously time consuming, confusing, and expensive. And you may miss it. You may miss what that news source is and the opportunity to engage with that donor. So those are the reasons why Google Alerts are not my favorite. Again, they're better than nothing, especially for those people you can't afford to miss information about. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. Okay, Adrian says, with large organizations with a large donor base, where is it best to spend time? Current prospects and portfolios, we are looking to qualify, etc.
Yeah. Um, I would say current prospects and portfolios when it comes to the news. That's the first and best time is to follow those prospects, make sure you're alerted when new things are happening, and also maybe to qualify if you want to get more information about those people, look into historical news. There's so much in historical news that you can find about those people. And especially for a large organization, right? You may not know, that they sold a business in the 90s for $50 million, right? But that article is out there in the place that they live because that impacts their hometown. Like that, there's so many great articles about people from the 80s, the 90s, even the early 2000s, before news was digitized as much, that's in the news that you can find to qualify, even to cultivate, right? So, and like I talked about the law school that used it to guide the conversation. You know, if you find things that have ever been in the news, you can use that. And savvy donors, again, know that that was out there, that there's access to this information, and it's a tool that is totally fair game to use and even talk to them about. And your organization is going to look, again, smart and prepared for knowing those things.
There were a couple of questions that have come in asking if you could recommend a source other than Google Alerts that might be useful. Someone, Ruben even mentioned TalkWalker.
Talkwalker. Possibly, yes. To monitor news, that could work. Again, insightful, we do that. That is all we do. We monitor news and provide you the content, not just the link. But there's Talkwalker, Cision is a media scanning tool. There's a number of Alma Connect is a media scanning tool. Those could help you scan, but they're not going to get past the paywalls of monitoring news. So those are just a few. I know a number of you have LexisNexis. That's a source you can use to monitor people, get some news. So those are a few recommendations.
Roseanne wrote, great info. I read 4 papers a day and also managed alerts on alumni. I specifically track promotions and have begun looking at digital editions of the Wall Street Journal to see exactly what donors are reading. Many still read print editions. It's kind of more of a comment, but yeah,
Yeah,
so she's
no,
wanting
they
to
do.
mention that.
They do. And I was remiss. Another way to monitor news outside of Google is to subscribe to papers. You know, if you have papers and sources, either at the places you live or where you know your donors are really active, you know, support those papers, subscribe to them, and, you know, use those directly instead of just relying on the Google alerts.
Um, Chris asked, can your product integrate with Salesforce?
We do not have an API connection, but a number of our customers with Salesforce, we have others, but we work with a number of organizations that have Salesforce as a database. We just work with them through a basic CSV file upload.
Um, Amanda is asking, does Insightful set up searches for everyone in a client's database?
Yeah, we can. So our customers work with us in a number of different ways. And one thing Insightful does is you either upload or use your API to get your database or a subset of your database into Insightful. And we save you time by automatically setting up smart or Boolean searches on those donors based on the information you give us. And then you have access. You can click into any of those donors or anyone in your database, and you automatically are going to get a news feed on them with historical information going back to the 1980s, early 1980s, for you to look back and do research. And you can also get an alert by following. You're not going to, you should probably should not follow your entire database if you have a huge database, unless you have a big team to do that, because that can get overwhelming. But you can follow the people you want with a simple click to get current news about those donors as well. So, I mean, there are like I said before, there are a number of ways to get news, platforms to get news, but our mission is really at Insightful is to make the process of getting news about your donors, both current and historic information, as easy as possible for your organizations to, you know, get that information, turn it into action, and ultimately cultivation that leads to money. That's what we do. That's what we're passionate about.
Right. Another question, this one's from Lauren. One of the biggest questions I have is the best way to disseminate news to gift officers. A digest, one-off emails, what format is most valuable?
Yeah, I'm a fan of the one-off emails to the gift officer that's responsible for the person in the news. they're more apt to get it, to do something with it, and pay attention to it, frankly. As a officer, I can say that we don't always read everything. If we're seeing it, if we're seeing something for the entire organization in a big digest, we may not read the email. But if you send it to us and it's about our particular person, maybe even put a little summary, make it easier for the gift officer, we'll do something about it, because it's going to lead to a deeper relationship with our person, and ultimately more resources for our organization and to help us hit our goals. So I'm a fan of the individualized, like, one-off email, make it simple, make it easy, provide the summary, and follow up, right? I mean, it's their job to use all of the tools in the toolbox to cultivate their donors. And a number of you are on the front lines of using those tools, getting news, getting information. And I think it's totally, I mean, I think it's just the right thing to do organization wise, to hold gift officers responsible to use the information, the golden information that you're providing to them, because it's good for the institution that you serve and the mission. That's why we're here, right? That's why we're in nonprofit, not not in a number of other lucrative careers. And it's good for their goals. A number of them have goals to hit. So I think it's a core responsibility that they use the tools and use that great information you're giving to them. That turned
Um,
into a stump speech. I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. Roseanne wants to know what the best alert option on international constituents might be.
Yeah. Um, Again, say insightful, because I don't know of anyone else that has the depth and breadth of both current and historical international news that we do. Um, I I'm not I'm and maybe others on the call have other recommendations, but that Insightful is the only tool that I know of that has that good, reliable international news information that's easy to get.
Okay. Um, Corinne says, in terms of metrics, how would you measure this activity and more importantly, its impact?
Yeah. Activity from the gift officers.
Maybe yeah, probably. Or
Yeah.
maybe even like if research is pushing it out, maybe somehow to measure, actually getting some traction between, the alerts to the gift officer to actually maybe getting a gift.
Yeah, I think it should always be noted in the CRM when you're sending this golden information to your gift officers. It should be documented. And I'm a big fan of collaboration between researchers and gift officers and check ins, right? So maybe it's a monthly check in, and it's okay, this is what you were sent and what happened with it. And using that to track, okay, number one, is it actually happening? Are they taking the information you're giving to them and using it for outreach? And two, when they are and they're having good success, you can track that and take it to your leadership to both show the value of news or whatever tech you're using to get that news, and the value of your great work. And I I'm a big fan of that collaboration, that accountability. I don't have, do this like these specific steps that you should use, but in general, I would say document, collaborate, and hold them accountable. And when information that you give those gift officers turn into major gifts, you should be celebrated as much as the individual cultivating those donors, especially if things wouldn't have happened if they didn't have that information. So I think you should be celebrated. You should keep on top of it, track it. You're probably better to track it than they are. Share it with your leadership. And when great things happen, ask for a raise.
Exactly. Um, Shannon is asking, can you share a list of those 14,000 sources?
Yes, I can. Shannon, if you I can grab your information from Emily and I would be happy to email you or anyone else that wants that source list. I just ask that you keep it internal to your organization and for the purposes of your organization and not share it externally or with other vendors.
Yes, we can do that. Um, okay, Roseanne says, thanks for answering. I work at a college and the papers are free to the campus community members through the library. So I think that's just something that she wanted to share.
Yeah.
Roger wants to know if Insightful does anything with due diligence.
Yes, we do. We don't have like a score or a, red, yellow, green, but a number of the organizations we work with use Insightful to research to do due diligence on their major donors and prospective major donors, especially before they make a major gift, name something, and they're finding a number of that Insightful, since it is current and historical news, they are able to find information about this donor, both positive and negative. They don't find negative very often, but it does fit what you would need for due diligence on someone because of the depth and breadth of sources that we cover. This is used a lot with international sources, with news that's harder to get and information that's harder to get. So that is how people are working with us for due diligence information.
Right. Sheila is asking, does Insightful offer free trials or demos? Is there an online option to request this, or is it best to get in touch with a sales rep?
Yeah, we do offer free demos. We'd love to demo the product, whether or not you're even in the market to purchase. We just want to show it. We're newer tech. We want to show it to you. And getting in touch, if you email marketing@insightful.com, I have it. Can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. If you email marketing@insightful.com, we will get in touch with you and give you a demo. And actually, Emerald Capers is on with us, and she is the account executive for the Northeast. If you happen to be in the Northeast, I know there's people from elsewhere that are with us, but Emerald will reach out once you reach out and find a good time on the calendar for us to get together and show you the tool and answer any questions that you have. We really do want to become more of a part of this community and want to share what we have to offer with you and be helpful as we can.
So actually, Sarah, there's a lot of people in the chat that are asking to be included on that source list.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if that's something that you just want to include in the post correspondence, or if you want to go through and it's up to you and Emerald if you want to go through and make a
Yeah,
note of everybody.
I made note of everyone. I'm also going to
Okay,
put my email in the chat real quick for you guys, just in
perfect.
case.
That's great.
Perfect.
Thank you, Emerald. Okay,
Yeah, because of the nature of what that is, we do need to send it out individually.
perfect.
But yes, we will
As
get
long as you
it
guys
to.
are grabbing those names, and that's great.
Yes,
So Leslie is asking, how far back in time do your articles go?
early 80s for the most part.
Okay. And then Georgia is asking, is your service based on the number of names that are included?
No, nope, that's not how we price. We don't price by records or even users. So you can have as many people in there as you want, and you
Okay.
can search whoever and whatever you want.
Okay, it looks like we just have some folks that are asking to be included. And I see Emerald. And then I think we're up to current right now with everybody's questions. Thank you, Sarah, for answering like 1,000 questions.
No, I love this is my favorite part. I love to interact and talk about news. Can I
Yeah.
maybe ask a question and
Yes,
for
of
the chat?
course. We would love
Um,
that.
yeah, how many of you today are actively monitoring your donors and trustees in the news? How many of you are monitoring and how many people?
Okay, let's
Just
see.
something I'm curious about.
And I have a question after that, if you don't mind, Sarah.
Yeah.
Okay, some people are um Oh, so somebody said 30 plus people.
Okay. That's good. That's actually high. If you believe it or not, they're
Somebody
it's
said
high.
actively monitoring, but not consistently, 30 to 40. We actively monitor donor trustees through Google Alerts and are identified through news feeds. We have likely 100 plus.
Okay. Emmy, did you say you had a question?
Yes, I was just going to ask. Some of the emails for you guys are showing up, but if you wouldn't mind just putting your email in the chat if you'd like the source list, then I can send it over to you in connection.
So Roseanne's saying that she monitors trustees who are working, but they also monitor insider trades in Edgar.
Yes. And just a note on it, and that's great to monitor Edgar. Edgar is included in Insightful. So if you are following a trustee or a donor and they're showing up in Edgar, that with insider trades, you'll get a ping on that to make that even easier.
Our entire team of 7 monitors 100 to 200 prospects.
Great.
That's from the RIT group. Okay, looks like we got some more. Thanks for the list. Oh, also I'll put my mine in here too, since I would also like the list. Um, oh, is Edgar monitored just for trades or for position changes, new board positions, etc.?
Whatever's in Edgar, we have the feed, so you could use it for that. If the person or company you're monitoring is in there, you'll get a ping.
Okay. Somebody else says that we monitored terms as well as names, example, our institution name and alumni.
That's a good best practice. And just quickly about Insightful, we have the ability in Insightful for you to monitor yourself. And that's how a number of our customers get good information about people they don't know that they should be monitoring.
Yeah. Somebody else again said that they monitor about 40 people and the school itself. That seems to be like the theme, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's you find so many great things about people you don't know about, right? Because especially our customers have found it with young people who are kind of on the rise in their career. That ends up in the news. They have no idea that person is doing what they're doing. They reach out. It's a good cultivation step. It's also good material for alumni magazines or newsletters to find alumni out there doing great things and report on it.
yeah. Okay. Oh, what is a manageable or suggested number for a solo prospect researcher to monitor?
Ooh, solo. I would say no more than 50. Would be a best practice.
Yeah.
And if you're a solo prospect, but it depends on how big your shop is, right? And what your um, trustee and principal donor pool looks like. But I would say start with 50 is a good, and no more than 50 is a good best practice to make sure you're staying on top of it. And if it goes well, you can expand from there, maybe get some more help, even if it's a student worker. We've found that to be successful in a number of our universities that are small shops. One thing about Google Alerts that I didn't mention before is an issue our customers and prospective customers have had with Google Alerts is you get alerts about the wrong person, or you get so many emails in the day, you just stop checking your Google Alerts. In Insightful, we have ways to use your demographic information to provide confidence scores about the news. So you have a better idea of, is this your person or not? So to get more accurate news about people with common names. And also, we only send one email every day with all of the people you're following. So it makes it, it helps your workflow and helps save you time so things don't get missed or ignored.
At this point now, everybody's just kind of saying thanks for a great session.
No, thank you. I'm really grateful for all of you for attending and this great discussion. And please keep in touch and let us know your news success, however you're using it. It's important, and we'd just love to hear your success stories.
Yeah, great. And as a reminder, we will, Apra New York will be doing a follow-up email. We'll be sending Sarah's slides, which will have her get in touch information that you're seeing on the screen right now. That will be included as well. And then the folks that asked for to see the source list will be hearing from Sarah and Emerald. So that's great. Sarah, thank you so much. As always, Apra New
You.
York, we, on behalf of all of us at Apra New York, we always appreciate your partnership and your collaboration. And this was a great session today. And thank you for spending your lunch hour with us, and stay safe in Florida.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Everybody, thank you for the great work you do. And we are grateful for the partnership with APRA New York. Have a
All
great rest
right.
of your week.
Thank you, you too, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and I'm sure we'll see you soon for another Apra New York program very soon. So thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.